to your perception of reality. But reality is in square quotes and perception is in square quotes. Why? Because all of this goes back to the beginning. Because your perception was constructed and your reality was constructed by the value positor. So that what you perceive and what you think is real is only a product of individuals who successfully orchestrated the control of your existence. Now that's the boogeyman. That's the boogeyman. And if Nietzsche is right, then it really is like the scene in The Matrix where Cypher decides to get plugged back in. If given the opportunity to put back on those blue contacts and lie to yourself, right? If given the reality to put back on those blue contacts and lie to yourself and never know of reality, that's comforting, right? In The Matrix, to be honest with you, they take the easy way out. Cypher's ability to plug himself back in and totally forget his real experience was the easy way out. The difficult way out is Cypher. This never happened in the movie, but the difficult way out, the real way out would be Cypher. You get to go back into the Matrix, but you will know, unlike before, that it's false. Now that's different because now it's going to weigh on you. It's going to press on you. In the real world, and The Matrix was a genius movie, but that's where they could have been epic, right? And this is not disrespect to The Matrix, those guys are freaking amazing. I love that movie. But the real scene with Cypher should have been, and of course, you know, this is sort of armchair, or what do you call it? Monday morning quarterbacking, right? The real dilemma is not simply the fact that Cypher plugs himself back in and forgets. It's Cypher plugs himself back in but knows that it's a lie. Because it's so much harder to do it. It's not impossible, but it's so much harder to do it. If I have the blue on and I'm looking at the world and everything is blue, and then I recognize that no, it's not, it's all of this, and it's just overwhelming for me because it's been years that I've been accustomed to this and it's just too much. I don't like it. I want to go back to what was normal, sort of this idea of longing for the nostalgia. Actually, Jose Ortega y Gasset talks about this, the best of times, the golden age type stuff, this concept. Then, all right, let me put the blue contacts back on. But as soon as I put the blue contacts back on, this is ridiculous. This isn't real. Quick side note. I just watched what was the name of that movie? I just watched X-Men First Class. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I was surprised. I didn't expect it to be that good. But there's a great scene in X-Men First Class where the spoiler alert. There's a great scene in X-Men First Class where Mystique, she's a chameleon, she can adapt to anyone's look. She assumes a persona that's comfortable, and she wears that persona day to day, regularly, rather than looking like how she looks. And Magneto goes to her, he goes, think about how much more powerful you would be if you stop expending the energy to put on this false persona. Look like how you really look. And of course, she ends up looking like how she looks. End of spoiler. The whole idea is, imagine what this world would be. Imagine what this world would be if we could act. It's not get away with monogamy. Some people want to be monogamous. You should have the right to be monogamous, right? But just in this example, imagine what the world would be. Imagine what marriage would look like in, for example, the United States. Well, I don't know what our divorce rate is. It's like 50 or 60% before the first 7 years of marriage, which doesn't take into consideration people who get divorced after 7 years. So I want to get a statistic on the total divorce rate. It's probably in the 70s, or maybe even higher. And arguably it's probably in that level. Partially people separate because of finances and stuff, but I would imagine infidelity is an overwhelming reason why people split up. Imagine how many marriages would be preserved if we got rid of the assumption that monogamy was the best policy. You get an itch, you scratch it, move on. I don't know. I don't think people are ready for that, right? That's lustful. That's Satanism. That's sensuality. Sexuality. That's you know. I don't know. It is what it is. It is what it is. And I'm not here to try and I'm not a politician. I'm not giving you a speech on how you ought to conduct your life or what you should do to make you happy. I'm just trying to give you a really. I'm trying to educate you. Is what I'm doing, and I think I'm successful at that. Because if you can understand what I'm saying, whether you disagree with it or agree with it is irrelevant. But if you can understand what I'm saying, and you understand the significance of what if it's the case. It's not about that your God doesn't exist. It's not that your laws are false. What if it's the case that functionally speaking, you could, for all practical purposes, live a totally different type of lifestyle, but the only reason that you're living the type of lifestyle that you are currently living is because someone decided to color your perception of reality. Nietzsche says, I want to restore the natural order. Right? He wants to take the natural order away from Christianity. And people think that, and not just Christianity, morality in this sense, people think that Christianity and morality has been done away with. It's not even close. I've heard people say that Christianity and morality is on its last, and soon it's going to dwindle. It has never been stronger. I absolutely disagree with that. Why? Because the institutions informed by these moral tenets are as strong as they've ever been. Discourse on marriage is as strong as it's ever been. Discourse on, you fill in the blank. I don't want to go through the whole, this is not I'm not a political, I'm political, but I don't do political crap publicly, right? But marriage is an example. It's as strong as it's ever been. Protect marriage as it's being attacked. It's in defense. We need da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We're having this discussion at a political level, right? The fact that we're having this discussion at a political level assumes that the nature of the act in and of itself has moral value to it. Nietzsche says you're wrong. So whether or not you recognize that the discourse is already situated in what is a Christian moral discourse, then you don't recognize how powerful the discourse is. If you think that atheism is on the rise, and if you think that atheism is taking control, you are sadly mistaken, because as strong as the expansion of agnosticism, atheism, secularism is as strong and as resilient as members within the religious tradition of varying kinds are. And we can see this in just one example, the contemporary political discourse, at least within the United States, on marriage. The fact that the discourse is even being had, this is from a Nietzschean standpoint, the fact that people are even contemplating the discussion assumes on both sides that there's an assumption, even within the atheist community, right? Because they're not properly steeped in sort of Nietzschean morality, right? Nietzschean moral principle, that you're already assuming that the act in and of itself is attributed, infused with, bound up with moral valuation. It's not. It's not. It's just an act. It's just an act. We, as a community, apply moral valuation to that act. And I mean, for me, it's like, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's very, very important to recognize Nietzsche denies this whole thing he denies. This is systemic control. But what Nietzsche's saying, I think, and I think I'm right, I could definitely justify this, there's no question, right? What I think Nietzsche's saying here is, you're being a pawn. You're being a pawn, right? You put yourself in a position where other people have control over your actions, not because you're weak, but because you have failed to recognize the nature and the complexity of the institution of manufacturing your perception of reality. What you perceive to be real is not real. What I need to do, says Nietzsche, is to show you an opposite way of living. And when you see that opposite way of living, you take off the context and you see this opposite way of living, whether you decide to practice it or not, it's going to mess up your cognitive, it's going to create cognitive dissonance, is what, to be technical. You're going to experience cognitive dissonance. What happens from that? A number of things. You could conform, you could get very, very defensive and violent and so on and so forth, but I am going to create that cognitive dissonance by asking you simply, what if it's not the way you think it is? So, I'm going to end there. I'm very glad to have ended the 100 notes. Next, I'll kick it out to 400 and change. I got to feel a nice way to stop it. But after this, immediately after this, I'm going to have a call for videos, and then I'm going to chill for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not really going to chill and be doing notes, but I won't be taking taping this. I got a new series I'm going to start, which I'm very excited about. Critical thinking series that's coming up next is going to be insane. But that's the end of this section. So with that, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day.